Every great show has a producer, a visionary, a man with the gold and the ambition to create a spectacle that will leave the audience breathless. The Colosseum was the greatest show on earth, and its producers dealt in the currency of life and death. Forget the Gladiator for a moment. He is merely the final, bloody product. Our story begins in a quiet, marble-floored room, far from the roar of the crowd. It begins with a man known as the editor, the sponsor of the games. He is a senator, an aristocrat, perhaps even the emperor himself. His goal is not entertainment, it is power. He is buying the love of the Roman people, one death at a time. Following the brutal logic of panem et circenses bread and circuses, the editor does not swing a sword, he signs a contract. But with that single signature, he unleashes a logistical hurricane. He needs a spectacle that will be remembered for generations. This requires more than just men fighting. It requires a narrative, a theme. Will it be a recreation of a famous battle? A mythological hunt with beasts from the farthest corners of the empire? His order sets a vast machine in motion. Scouts are dispatched to the forests of Germania for bears, to the deserts of Africa for lions and leopards, to the banks of the Nile for crocodiles. A single games could require thousands of animals. Each one must be trapped, caged, and transported hundreds of miles. Arriving in the dark underbelly of the Colosseum, ready for its bloody debut, but beasts are only half of the equation. He needs the main attraction, the fighters. For this, the editor turns to a man from a different world. A man he would never invite to his dinner table, but whose services are indispensable. The Lanista. The Lanista is the owner and trainer of a gladiator school. The ludus. He is a merchant of muscle and death, often a former gladiator himself. He is a shrewd, ruthless businessman who buys and sells human lives as if they were cattle. He sees men not as warriors, but as asset, an investment to be trained, honed, and leased out to the highest bidder. The meeting between the editor and the Lanista is a sterile transaction for a bloody business. A price is negotiated, a roster is discussed. I need a dozen retieri, that the editor might say, and see that they are matched against heavily armored secutors for contrast. And I need a champion. Find me a man the crowd will roar for, and then roar even louder for when he is slain. The deal is struck. The gold changes hands. The producer has greenlit his show. The talent scout has his shopping list. The cogs of the death machine have begun to turn, all set in motion by a man who may never even set foot on the blood-soaked sand himself. The producer has placed his order. The Lanista has his contract. Now he must acquire the raw materials for the death machine. He needs body, but not just any bodies. He needs flesh that can be molded into a spectacle. The pipeline that feeds the Colosseum is fed by three dark rivers of humanity. The first, and most plentiful, is the river of war. Prisoners captured on the frontiers of the empire. Gauls, Germans, Dacians, men who were once proud warriors, fighting for their own lands. Now, they are human spoils, chained and marched to the heart of the empire they fought against. They are strong, they already know how to fight, and better yet, the Roman crowd loves to see their former enemies die for their entertainment. The second river flows from the courts of justice. Condemned criminals, damnati ad gladium, the damned to the sword. Men sentenced not just to die, but to die publicly as part of the games. Their fate is sealed. They are not expected to survive their first fight. They are the opening act, the disposable bodies used to warm up the crowd and stain the sand with the first layer of blood. The third river is the most tragic, the river of desperation. Free men, buried under such crushing debt that they sell their own bodies and freedom to the Lanista. They sign a contract, the octoramentum, swearing a sacred oath to be branded, chained, beaten with rods, and killed by the sword. They are volunteers, yes, but volunteers with no other choice. These three rivers converge at the gates of the Ludus, the Gladiator School. This is not a place of training. It is a high-security prison with a forge at its center. Upon entry, a man's old life is surgically severed. His name is erased, replaced by a stage name. He is branded with the mark of the Ludus, a permanent sign of ownership on his flesh. He is then inspected by the doctors, the trainers. These are often veteran gladiators, survivors of the arena who are just as brutal as their master. They assess his physique, his natural strengths and weaknesses. A man is not asked what kind of fighter he wants to be. He is told what he will become. Is he big and strong? He will be a heavily armored secutor. Is he quick and agile? He will be armed with a net and trident. He has been captured, judged, or broken. He has been stripped of his name and branded like an animal. He has been categorized and assigned a role. He is no longer a person. He is a product, a specific model of fighter. waiting on the assembly line of the death machine to be programmed, for his one and only purpose, to perform, to bleed, and to die beautifully. The product has been acquired and forged. The stage is set, but a collection of fighters and beasts is not a show. It's just a brawl. To create a spectacle worthy of the Colosseum, you need more than a producer. You need a director, a showman, a master of pacing, suspense, and bloody choreography. This role often fell to the Lanista himself, or a trusted veteran gladiator. He was the man on the ground on the day of the games, the one who translated the editor's grand vision into a visceral, unforgettable experience. His domain was the dark labyrinthine world beneath the arena floor. This was the backstage of hell. A maze of tunnels, elevators, and holding pens, teeming with nervous men and terrified animals. The director's first job was to create the perfect Pompatha opening parade. This was the audience's first look at the talent. The gladiators would march out in magnificent, ornate armor that they would never actually wear in combat, their weapons gleaming. It was pure theater, designed to build anticipation, to let the crowd pick their favorites and choose who to bet on. Once the show began, the director became a master of psychological manipulation. He didn't just unleash fighters at random. He crafted a narrative. The day would start with the Venetians, the wild beast hunts. But it was never just a man versus a beast. The director would use the complex machinery of the Hypogeum, the trapdoors and elevators, to create surprises. A hunter, thinking he has cornered a single lion, would suddenly find himself surrounded as 3 more lions are lifted into the arena from hidden doors. The sand itself became a treacherous, unpredictable stage. Then came the Meridiani, the midday executions. This was the grim interlude. But even here, the director aimed for a twisted form of artistry. Criminals weren't just killed, they were forced to reenact gruesome myths, dying in the role of a character torn apart by beasts or burned alive, turning state-sanctioned murder into a form of grotesque mythological theater. Finally, the main event, the gladiatorial contests. The director's genius was in the matchups. He understood the archetypes. The crowd loved a classic David versus Goliath story. So, he would pit a nimble, lightly armed Ricciarius against a hulking, heavily armored Secutor. It wasn't about a fair fight. It was about creating the most visually compelling and suspenseful duel. He controlled the tempo of the day, building from the animal hunts to the executions, and culminating in the dramatic clash of the star gladiators. He was the puppet master, pulling the strings from the shadows, ensuring the crowd was never bored, always on the edge of their seats. Their emotions expertly manipulated from thrill, to horror, to bloodlust. The gladiator was the star, but the director wrote his story in blood. The show has reached its climax. The hero has fallen. The editor gives the signal. The crowd roars its approval. But as the star gladiator breathes his last, the most invisible parts of the death machine spring into action. The show is over, but the work is not done first. The technicians of the underworld, deep in the Hypogeum, the engineers who operated the elevators and trapdoors, stand down. Their job required precision timing, hoisting massive cages of lions or scenery into the arena at a moment's notice. A mistake on their part could ruin the director's carefully crafted surprise. They were the silent, soot-stained stagehands of this bloody theater on the arena floor. The cleanup crew emerges, the libertinari, the undertakers of the Colosseum. These were low-status workers, tasked with the grim, efficient removal of the dead. A figure dressed as Charon, the mythological ferryman of the underworld, approaches the fallen gladiator. He gives the body a ritualistic tap with a mallet to ensure he is truly dead. There is no ceremony, no honor. It is a clinical procedure. The body is then loaded onto a cart and dragged from the arena through the Porta Libertinaria, the gate of death. The sand is raked over to cover the blood, making the stage clean for the next act. Out of sight, the armor is stripped from the corpse, to be repaired and reused. The body itself might be thrown into a mass grave. He was a hero for a few minutes, but now he has just refused to be disposed of. The machine is ruthlessly efficient. While the crowd files out, still buzzing from the spectacle, the final accounting begins. The Lanista tallies his roster. How many of his products were killed? How many survived to fight another day? He calculates his profits from the lease fees and his losses from the dead gladiators. It's a cold, hard balance sheet of life and death. The editor, the great producer, measures his own success. Was the crowd pleased? Will his name be praised in the forum? Tomorrow, will this spectacular display of generosity secure him the votes he needs in the next election? His investment in blood has paid its political dividend. The producer, the director, the talent scout, the technicians, the cleanup crew, an entire hierarchy of professionals, all working together to power a single, repeatable process. The Gladiator was just one part, the most visible, the most celebrated, but ultimately, the most disposable. The crowd saw heroes and villains, courage and death. The men behind the blood saw logistics, assets, and profit. And as the sun set on the Colosseum, they were already planning the next show.
We have walked with the men who ruled Rome's arena of death. Now, we turn from the roar of the crowd to a place of absolute silence, a place of immense power, run entirely by women. They were Rome's most honored citizens, sacred, untouchable, worshipped like goddesses. They held secrets of the state and lived in a palace of unimaginable luxury. But this privilege came at a terrifying price. A single vow, taken as a little girl, bound them for 30 years. A vow of absolute purity. What happened if that vow was broken? What was the punishment for Rome's most sacred prisoners? The answer is a horror worse than any beast in the Colosseum. Join us next time as we uncover the terrifying life of a Vestal Virgin.